welcome back to yet another edition of Behind the Lens. I am film critic, creator, and host of Behind the Lens, Debbie Elias, and you can find my movie reviews and interviews in the U.S. and abroad in print and online 24/7, more particularly on BehindTheLensOnline.net. But every Monday, I'm right here live on Adrenaline Radio, 11 a.m. Pacific Time, 2 p.m. Eastern Time, where we go behind the lens and below the line with movers, shakers in the indie world, tent poles, composers, music, authors, screenplays. We cover it all. And today, very excited. Of course, I've got to say, I got a lot of great feedback from you guys who listened in last week and picked us up, listened on iTunes after the live show. And yes, we are on iTunes. Every show is on iTunes. Every show is also on BehindTheLensOnline.net and a few other places that pick us up. But a lot of feedback from last week's show. And after my wonderful guest, Brian Cavallaro, and we talked about Against the Night and shooting in Holmesburg Prison in Philadelphia. If you haven't seen the film, please, I highly recommend you see it, Against the Night. It is a lot of fun, a lot of great filmmaking done. Filmmakers out there, cinematographers, directors will really appreciate the efforts that Brian put in and the effect created with shooting only with flashlights in a prison that has no windows and shooting at night. But it's a fun story. It's a fun film. And I can't recommend it highly enough. But thank all of you who emailed, and you can email us. BTLradioshow@prodigy.net. So we got a lot of feedback on Brian shooting in a prison and the interest in that. Well, a show that I hope you'll also send us some feedback on is today's show. Two wonderful directors. One of these directors I have admired for decades. He is one of the most prolific television directors out there today. You may know some of his big screen work as well. Murder at 1600, Halloween 4. What else has he done? Free Willy 2. But then, Bones. Now, all of our regular listeners over the past few years and my regular readers know my great affection for Bones and the wonderful David Boreanaz, who I first met when he was a teenager, and our fathers were working together. Our fathers were friends and worked together for almost 40 years. So I am a huge supporter of David's work, and I think a lot of his directorial expertise he picked up learning from Dwight Little. Dwight joins us at the half-hour mark to talk about his new film, The Last Rampage, which is pun intended here, a killer. Stars Robert Patrick, Bruce Davison, John Hurd, Heather Graham, and Molly Quinn from Castle, which Dwight Little also directed an episode or two of Castle. This is based on the true story of Gary Tison, one of the most infamous prison escapes in the history of law enforcement and prison incarcerations. 1978, this massive manhunt with multiple murders. And Robert Patrick plays Gary Tison. But we're going to talk to Dwight in depth about that. The film is, to be blunt, amazing. Absolutely amazing. And a lot of it is not only due to performance, but James W. Clark's script based on his book that he wrote about the situation. So that'll be fun. But before we get to Dwight, we have writer, director, and former painter, artist, Vincent Sabella is with us for his new film, Elizabeth Blue, which takes a very sensitive and poignant look at mental illness. It's a beautiful film. Again, cinematography plays a big part. Joel Marsh, cinematographer, and outstanding performances from Anna Schaefer as Elizabeth Blue, and a longtime favorite for many of you out there, Kathleen Quinlan. So Vincent will be joining us in the next few minutes. I was going to start talking about and play you some clips of my exclusive interview with Michael Cuesta on American Assassin, but my sound engineer has momentarily disappeared. So I'll start talking about American Assassin. Oh, and here comes Pam. She's back with us. She's doing like triple duty today since people don't like to come into work. What can I say? American Assassin, last month you heard me briefly bring it up while we were still under embargo. The film opened this weekend. Embargo lifted last Tuesday before the film opened. This is the 21st century spy thriller. What Tom Clancy was to the 80s spy thriller, Vince Flynn, who created the character of Mitch Rapp, is to the 21st century spy thriller. And Michael Cuesta has stepped in to direct a killer film. Michael Keaton has never been better. And Michael Keaton just keeps getting better with age. Let's face it, every film, once he hit Birdman, everything since then, it is just impeccable, flawless, and he just pushes the envelope further and further. Dylan O'Brien, last time most of us saw him, he was young teenager shooting Maze Runner. Now he is transformed into a man, and he plays the lead character of Mitch Rapp. Also on hand is Taylor Kitsch, plays a very mysterious character named Ghost. Just all around excellence. The film is produced by Nick Wexler and Lorenzo Di Bonaventura. Lorenzo is one of the great action producers in the business today. Nick is known for story. So the marriage is absolutely perfect. And Michael Cuesta, this is really his first entree into action. He has directed action film sequences before, but never a film that is considered an action thriller. Some of Michael's prior works have been Kill the Messenger, or TV direction for Dexter, True Blood, Homeland, 6 Feet Under. So this is an origin story that Vince Flynn has created for us. And this is Michael's first time at bat as an action director. So, of course, when we sat down for our exclusive interview, the first thing that I had to ask him about was the action learning curve. And we're going to hear shortly from him. And we got into a lot of detail about shooting action and what made this the right film for him to jump into as an action director. So, Pam, we have Vincent on the phone, do we not? So, okay, we're going to put Michael on hold for a minute, when we're going to bring Vincent Sabella on and talk about Elizabeth Blue. And then we will come back to American Assassin. Hopefully, you guys all know by now that I will not cut our talent off. So, depending on what happens for the hour. But Michael's interview will be up later today with audio included on behindthelensonline.net. So check it out if we don't get back to it today. But right now, let's bring Vincent on then, Pam. So, welcome, Vincent. Vincent Sabella, how are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am thrilled to be talking to you, especially after seeing what a lovely and sensitive film you have made with Elizabeth Blue.
Oh, thank you so much.
I didn't know what to expect going into the film. I know you co-wrote it with Alfred Huffington, and you directed it. This is your first feature direction. You've done some prior shorts. After coming out of an entirely other world as an artist. I mean, this is a beautiful transition for you, and something that is very striking to me, knowing that you are also an artist, is your visual composition of Elizabeth Blue. All of your frames, your tone, your lighting, it is all exquisitely done.
Oh, thank you so much for the compliment. Thank you. I really appreciate that.
You know, to tell our audience, tell them what is the story of Elizabeth Blue, and what led you to tell this story?
Well, Elizabeth Blue is basically about a young woman who is recently released from a psychiatric hospital, and when she's released, she's struggling with ongoing episodes of schizophrenia. And but through it all, she has the love and support of her fiance Grant that she plans on marrying. So he basically sticks with her through thick and thin.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, that's really the gist without giving too much away.
Yeah, because this has a lot of surprises and secrets in it that we don't want to give away.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a movie that the audience needs to pay attention to.
Oh,
and really look for all those clues and everything. So it's it's very exciting.
Well, something that you did, and there are the issues of mental illness are treated in various ways on film, be it documentaries or narratives. This one, as I said, you treat this very sensitively. But you take us through the stages of dealing with the illness and treatment and the whole idea of therapy and medications. And, it's very methodical and it's very well thought out in how you constructed this.
Well, thank you so much. I think one of the reasons why it is so thought out is because I'm a functioning schizophrenic. I suffer from OCD, schizophrenia, depression, anxiety. I basically based this film on. First of all, this originated from another script, and I did a page one rewrite on this. And I based it on a year in 2010 when all my medications had failed. And I put the story of Elizabeth Blue together from that year that was very, very bad to me. And, I couldn't be happier with the way it turned out. So as far as all the medications Elizabeth's on, all the hallucinations she sees, those are all my real hallucinations, all my real medications, everything that I suffered through during this very difficult year in 2010.
Wow.
So it's about 98% biographical.
Oh my God, Vincent, how cathartic was it for you?
It really is.
Has it been cathartic for you to not only put your story down on paper in the form of Elizabeth Blue, but then to make the actual film? Or was that, or what, how did you feel in terms of reliving so much of this while you're making the film?
Well, it's funny. When I went to write the script, a lot of things started to come up for me that I had forgotten. Because I really put myself in a place where I really needed to remember. And, I think writing the script was a little bit more difficult for me than when we were actually filming. When we were actually filming, I had to step off set twice because the scenes were so realistically real, and it really shook me, and I just needed to step away. So that was really bothersome to me because I never had to leave my set before. But as far as being cathartic, I mean, it wasn't the filming Elizabeth Blue wasn't so much cathartic as when I made my first short film, Note. That was more cathartic for me, I think, because that was also based on me and a suicide attempt I had when I was about 16. So I think I went through all that before. And with this, I was just really focused on telling the story, telling it accurately, telling it 100% true, and making sure that the performances were just dead on, and it was nothing over the top, and it just it showed mental illness what it really truly is, and it wasn't sugar-coated in any way, shape, or form.
Well, your casting is impeccable. You bring Anna Schaefer as Elizabeth. Wow. And
she's brilliant.
but then you have one climactic, explosive scene in there between Kathleen Quinlan, who plays Elizabeth's mother, Carol, and Anna as Elizabeth. Every mother-daughter on the planet can relate to that scene.
Oh, yeah. I mean, that was fantastic filming that scene. I mean, you know, I don't do any rehearsals or anything, and they just showed up, and they just went right into it. And we must have did the scene about maybe 8 times, and we had it. Like, it was so quick and painless, and it was effortless, and they just nailed it. Like, Kathleen Quinlan gets on set and she's like, okay, let's do this. And you're just like, okay, let's go. 1, 2, 3, here's your mark, and let's go.
How strictly did you adhere to the script then? Or did you allow for, especially in a scene like that is so explosive and so volatile and visceral, do you want them to stick to the script, or do you allow for ad-libbing to really capture the emotion?
Yeah, well, with anything I do, anything I write, I always tell my actors, I'm like, listen, this is what I wrote. You don't have to stick to it. If it doesn't flow off your tongue, change it to the way you would say it. Just get the same point across. I personally love surprises. I love improv. So whatever happens in the moment, those are the best moments to me. Mm-hmm. So there's no wrong or right when you're on my set. Like, so if you wanna do something, just do it, because you never know what the outcome is, and you never know what the beautiful surprise is going to be. Mm-hmm. So that went for everything throughout the film. You know, there was no wrong or right. It was just do it, just do it. So
now, how does that work then when you're working with your cinematographer Joel Marsh? Because I have to say, your framing is beautifully done. The light, you keep your tone, your visual tone is light, which is a wonderful contrast and juxtaposition to the darker notes of the thematic elements. So I just see you keep the rooms light and sparse, very Spartan in decor, but tasteful. A lot of whites, natural light.
Yeah.
Was this a specific design to counter the idea of darkness, of illness, but at the same time representing kind of a light at the end of the tunnel?
Yeah, absolutely. It really was. I mean, you nailed it. I mean, when I met with Joel, I mean, me and him hit it off immediately, and he knew exactly what I wanted. And I'm very much a fan of handheld and Steadicam work, and Joel Marsh has to be the best Steadicam operator out there. I mean, he is so brilliant. I swear, when he holds the camera, it's like he's holding a magic wand. So he knew just exactly what I wanted in terms of the shots, the lighting, everything. I mean, working with Joel was so effortless, and he was such a collaborator. And when I say I had to maybe say something to him once on set, but otherwise he showed up and just knew everything that I wanted. And this entire shoot was just so effortless. The cast, the crew, everybody, they just gave 150%. I mean, I never expected anything like this. It was just amazing. But the camera, I couldn't be more happier with the cinematography, the camera work. I mean, it's just, there was things that didn't make it into the movie that I was really upset about, but you have to make those cuts.
Sure.
So,
yeah,
I mean, there was beautiful shots, and I was like, oh, we have to cut this. And it would give me a knot in my stomach. I'd be like, no, I don't want to cut it.
Well, and some of the very beautiful shots that I can attest to that are in the film, after purchasing a Christmas tree, Elizabeth and Grant, and the tree is lit up in the corner, and the room is subdued with virtually no light, but for the light coming from the Christmas tree. And then
Yeah.
I don't know if you found this store or if production design stepped in here, but when Elizabeth goes into a bridal shop to look
I found that store.
Oh, that is the
So,
most beautiful
yeah,
store.
it did not need any set decoration at all. The
Okay.
bridal shop is located on Beverly Boulevard in Los Angeles, and it is just absolutely stunning. And it looks like a castle from the outside, and the inside it was everything I had envisioned. When I wrote the script, it's exactly what I wrote. And when I was thinking about, oh my God, this is going to be a nightmare with production design. They're going to have to get all these dresses and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I have to look for a practical location. I have to.
Mm-hmm.
And me and my producer, we just went out, and I Googled a couple things. I didn't find anything. And then I was actually out for lunch, and I was like, is that a bridal shop? And I went in, and I talked to the owner, and I had my producer call, and we got the shop, and it was amazing.
What is the name of the bridal shop? Because it is so superb. I think they need a credit here.
They do, and I'm going to Google it while I'm on with you, because I'm completely blanking on the name right now.
But it's
so,
and even the lighting, it has a candlelight tone to it, which, as you know, all women out there know, the two best lights, candlelight and moonlight. So
exactly, those are the best lightings.
So I mean, but I really thought you did a full set dress on that. It is that perfect for this film and for the dream that we are sure that Elizabeth wants as a perfect bride. Absolutely amazing, Vince. But you know, something else that's very amazing with the film, your soundtrack and your score. You have such it is very eclectic. You have tunes from that are fresh. You've got that hard piano that coincides with Elizabeth in the mental hospital. And you can feel the frenzy as the keys the piano keys are being pounded on, the mental frenzy she must be going through. But then you counter later on throughout the film with American classics and standards.
Mm-hmm.
Was it difficult to put the soundtrack together?
No. Well, to answer your question early before, though, the bridal shop's called Claire Pettibone.
Okay.
It's they make all the dresses there. Everything is all couture.
Okay.
And so it's located on Beverly Boulevard, and they were actually absolutely amazing. Now, to your question about the music, when I wrote Elizabeth Blue, I wrote every single one of those songs into the script. I knew what I wanted. I knew the sound. I wanted the music to basically go against the grain of the scene. Mm-hmm. So whatever was happening in the scene, I wanted it to basically play against it. Mm-hmm. And, you know, almost give it like this feeling of a haunting feeling. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I mean, it's all, and it comes from my personal style of music that I love, all the classics, and you know, everything that resonates with me and everything I'm drawn to. So, you know, I mean, my only concern was getting all the music, and we were so lucky and so blessed to get all the music.
I was going to say, as you're telling me, you're writing it into the script, and the first thing I'm thinking as you're talking is, oh my God, what if the licensing had fallen through?
Oh, we almost had an issue with the. I don't want to say which song it was because I don't want to give anything away, but I'll say the song at the end of the movie. That song, I won't say what it is, but we are the first film ever to license that song.
Really?
The movie's release. Yes.
Oh my God. It would.
I wish I could say which song it is, but I can't.
No, but You telling me that and me knowing what song that is, if you didn't have that song, it would have changed the entire tone.
Oh, it would have changed everything. I would have had to basically rewrite most of the story because I tied it all to that.
It's all tied to it. Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Oh my God, Vincent.
So I mean, and that's something I do with all my scripts. I always write the music into the script because I think it helps with I think everybody can get a sense of what the tone I'm going for. I think it helps the actors know what's going to happen in the scene. I think it helps the production design. I think there's so many beneficial things to writing everything into a script. I mean, even with my descriptions in my script, I tend to overwrite them. But I do that so the actors can find the clues and costume and production design and my cinematographer. Everybody can find the clues of what I want. I even write camera angles into the script. I mean,
well, especially now when you're directing, though, that's got to come in very handy for you because when you know you're going to direct, you're visualizing what this is going to be as you're writing.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, it does.
So
there's no question.
It really does. It makes everything easy for everybody. It really seriously does. And I get a lot of flack on that from my producer Joe Dane because he's like, he's always like, you're overwriting. I'm like, yeah, but it needs to be in there. It has to be in there. Everybody needs to know what's going on.
Well, in essence, you're shortcutting here because so many directors will put together a lookbook and pass that out to the crew and the department heads and all. You're eliminating
I also did that too.
You're eliminating that step by just placing this information within the script.
Yeah, I mean, I put it in the script, but I also did create lookbooks for every single department. Like, when I met my cinematographer, I gave him a complete lookbook of the color scheme I wanted and the shot directions from other films and everything for costume design. It was like a Bible. It was so intense. And it was huge. And the same with production design. I mean, everything. I had gotten so started so well in advance to even pre-production starting that it was crazy. Like, it was all just planned out, and it was I had such an advantage because I had so much time leading up to it. And it was a well-oiled machine.
So now how can everybody see Elizabeth Blue?
Elizabeth Blue is opening on Friday, September 22nd in select cities. You can get your tickets on Fandango. It opens in New York City, Los Angeles, Austin, San Francisco, Cleveland, Ohio, Seattle, Atlanta. I'm missing another one, Minneapolis.
Okay.
And you can get your tickets on Fandango. Just go on and type in your city, see if it's playing, and if it is, it'll come up and tell you the theater. And for that, you could follow Elizabeth Blue on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter.
And of course, for those not lucky enough to have Elizabeth Blue opening in their city, when will we see this on VOD and or DVD Blu-ray?
Well, hopefully what's happening is we're hoping that it will expand. So you're probably not going to see this on VOD until late January, February.
Okay. All right.
So, yeah, because originally we were going to release it a little bit earlier, but decided against that.
Yeah, get through the Christmas holidays and, so that Elizabeth Blue doesn't get lost in the shuffle of everything coming out for the awards campaigns.
Yes, exactly.
Oh,
so,
Vincent,
yeah.
This has been just an absolute joy having you on the show this morning. Unfortunately, I have to let you go so that I can bring another director on. But please, will you come back on the show? I would love to have you back, especially when the film gets out into the bigger world on VOD or DVD Blu-ray.
Absolutely. I'd come back anytime. Thank you so much for having me.
I mean,
This is fantastic. Thank you so much.
I can't wait to see your next film.
Well, thank you so much, and you have a wonderful day.
You too, Vince. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye.
And that was Vincent Sabella talking about Elizabeth Blue, in theaters and limited this Friday. But right now, we're moving on to, I now have joining us a director I have been looking forward to speaking with, in all honesty, for years, Dwight Little. Hello, Dwight.
Hi, good morning, Debbie.
Welcome to Behind the Lens.
It's a lot of fun. I've got a huge reverb on my line, but I'll do my best.
Okay. You sound great on our line.
Okay, good.
I have to say, I am such a huge admirer of your work. I have been, Murder at 1600. That is still one of my favorite films. Whenever I'm flipping channels, if I see that, no matter what point it is in the film, I must stop and watch.
Yeah, that's a cable staple, isn't it?
It sure is, and I sure hope you're getting residuals on that sucker.
Yeah, every time it's on, I tell my wife we can go out to dinner.
That's just it. Marked for Death is another good one, but that one doesn't pop up that often.
Not as much, no.
But then, of course, you go from feature films to you have been a staple in television directing for a few decades now. And, you've done The Practice. You did some one-offs with Castle. You did The Finder, Drop Dead Diva, Dollhouse, and, of course, one of my all-time favorites, Bones. You did.
Yeah.
I have great love for Bones. I don't know if you were listening at the top of the show, but David Boreanaz and I have known each other since he was a mere teenager. We were both living in Philadelphia, and our fathers worked together for almost 40 years.
Oh, how fun. I know David's father very well. He's a great
Dave.
Guy.
Dave is one of the sweetest men on the planet, as is his wife, Patty. And they've been part of my life for over 40 years now.
Well, that is a small world.
And I highly suspect that when David started getting into directing some episodes of Bones, I think a lot of it was from paying attention to you as a director, because you are exemplary.
Well, I appreciate that. That's very kind. I've known David now for a long time, and I know his parents really well as well.
Yeah. It's when both my parents passed away, Dave Roberts was the very first person at the funerals, both times.
Wow.
And that just, those were some of the times where you hold it together until that man walks in. And having been such a close friend of my father's,
wow.
That was, so I have great affection for the entire Robert/Boreanaz family.
That's great.
But now we're here to talk about this new film of yours that I just can't get enough of, The Last Rampage. What a film.
It's a crazy story, right?
Oh, I remember the story of Tison's prison break. I remember that story. It made national headlines.
It did, although it's oddly under the radar. It's a little surprising to me as I talk to people. You're kind of the exception, how many people hadn't really heard about it. But in Arizona, of course, it was huge news.
How did this project come to you? I know James Clark wrote the book about it, and I know he did the screenplay. How did this find its way to you, especially after so much television, and now this is really your big jump back into film?
Yeah, one quick clarification. The screenplay was by Alvaro Rodriguez. So James Clark, of course, wrote the book, and the screenplay was by Alvaro Rodriguez. But the really quick story is that my stepson, Jason Richter, is an actor, and when he was younger, this book was brought to his attention when he was more of an age to play Donnie.
Mm-hmm.
And then it never came together as a movie, and then Jason showed me the book some years ago, and then when I read it, I thought, oh my goodness, this is really something. And so it took me a while to develop the script, and finally when we got the script ready, that's when we dove in.
How do you go about casting a film like this? And not just casting, but the cast that you chose. I mean, you've got Robert Patrick, this is one of the finest performances of his career. You've got Bruce.
Yeah, he's something.
Oh, my God. You've got Bruce Davison. You've got Heather Graham, Molly Quinn, Chris Browning, John Hurd, and one of my favorites, William Shockley, going back to the days of Dr. Quinn, Medicine Woman. He's chameleonic in the roles that he can play.
Well, he surprises people because it's not a huge part, but he's so effective in what he's doing. I will say that the first reach out was to Robert because I knew that we needed Gary before we could really start casting the rest of the movie. Mm-hmm. And I had the good luck to work with Robert 3 different times on the X-Files, on the Dusk Till Dawn with Robert Rodriguez, mm-hmm. and also on Scorpion. So I had a very close working relationship with Robert, and of course, I couldn't help but think about him because I knew him very well for Gary. And I just intuitively knew that he would be able to get this character. And when he read the script, he just called me and said, well, we have to do this. So it did start out of my working relationship with Robert.
Wow. So then how do you bring everybody else into this? Obviously, you have to get somebody who will match Robert beat for beat to play Randy Greenawalt, our co-escapee, in addition to Tison's 3 sons.
Well, the sons, that was a tricky thing because we did read a lot of great young actors. We read them, and so we knew, of course, about Alex, but they all came in really and did read for those parts and won the parts based on their auditions, as did Chris Browning. Because Chris, the real Randy Greenawalt, is a little more heavy set than Chris. Mm-hmm. But his presence in the room was so overpowering. We decided that he was the right one. Bruce Davison, I've just been a personal fan of, I don't know, forever and ever, all the way back to Short Eyes and things like that. So I reached out to him through our casting agent, Marina Rada, and just took a chance. And, of course, when he knew Robert was already part of it, that was a big enticement because people really respect Robert as an actor.
Mm-hmm. And, of course, Bruce, as Sheriff Cooper, he really makes us feel the weight of the sheriff's responsibility, not to mention his guilt. Davison is so emotionally compelling that as I'm watching the film, I'm as equally intrigued and riveted on him when he's on screen as I am when Robert's on screen.
Yeah, I call him, he's the moral conscience of the movie because he can't figure out in his own mind how this kind of evil moves through the world, and he tries to explain it as best he can to Molly, who has her own kind of coming-of-age moment. But even at the end of the movie, Bruce just doesn't quite understand it and thinks he could have done more. He is the moral kind of counterweight to Gary in the movie. He's really good.
What kind of research did you delve into as you started putting this film together and then working with your cinematographer, Rafael Leyva, to develop the look? Because there are photographs, as we see in the end credits. There are photos documenting aspects of the crimes, of the escape. So there are, and it is a true story. So you do have some responsibility to the truth. But how did you go about researching and then implementing all of that to create the entire visual palette? and construct?
Well, in terms of the content, I didn't even want to try to do this movie without the years of underlying research that James Clark had done on the book.
Mm-hmm.
So I had the book as a very detailed foundation. And then I did look at a lot through the Arizona Star, the Arizona Republic. I looked at a lot of historical reference. There were a few YouTube things around that just sort of showed Arizona in that time period. Of course, we studied the wardrobe of the sheriff, what people wore in those days, and then tried to pretty meticulously put the period together. When it came to the final visual style, we wanted that, I guess what you'd call almost a tobacco rust feeling to this very harsh landscape, and then Raphael and I did a lot of tests to create a look before we started shooting. And
the end result, the visual tone, the tonal bandwidth, is beautiful.
Thank you. He shot it on an Arri Alexa, and it does have. We shot it with anamorphic lenses, and it really has. I kind of think it captures the harshness of the world that these people lived in.
But it also captures. You've got a great juxtaposition with the beauty of the desert.
Yeah.
And that's what I found that particularly striking, is that we also see the beauty of the desert, but set against the gritty harshness of the Tison world, and also the bloodshed. There is no law. You were not at a loss for bloodshed here.
Well, we tried to balance that as carefully as we could, because we wanted to be, not cover it up and not sanitize it, but we didn't want to indulge in it either. So it was a very tricky balance in terms of what to show, especially, of course, with the family.
Yeah, that's
and then with the honeymoon couple. It's the honeymoon couple especially is pretty rough.
But you also, you and Raphael, you came up with some really interesting camera angles with which to show a lot of this. And so that it leaves much to the imagination as we're seeing blood, splattering and just spurting without...
Well, you think you've seen more than you actually have. I mean, that's part of what's there. The implication, you in your mind, you do see more than what's actually there. But I did find it, just as on a technical note, I found it very liberating that we shot the movie with one camera. And most film and TV shows today are shot with multiple cameras, 2, 3, 4, 5 different cameras. And there's something very liberating to shoot a movie with one camera. Of course, it's a cost issue, but it also puts all the attention on the composition of, one shot at a time. And I think it allows you to really compose and pay attention very carefully to what you're putting in the frame.
Now, with shooting with only one camera, what did that do for you in terms of rehearsal time and preparation as a means to either, cut down on the number of takes you'd have to do or economize with the shots? Did that impact that
Well,
that
that's
area?
right. You have to shoot what you know. You have to cut the sequence really in your head, because you're just going to be able to shoot what you need. And I do rehearse very thoroughly in advance, so a lot of the dialogue questions and the blocking, some of it's been worked out before we get to the floor to shoot. But I only could get the shots that I knew that I would, need in the cutting room. And I do have the advantage of, however, 80 hours of television or whatever it is that I've done, so I kind of know, what I need.
How beneficial was it for you then, working with Bill Lynch, whom you worked with on Bones?
Right.
to bring Bill in as your editor. Since you're doing a lot of editing, in your head as you're going, how was that ebb and flow then when you actually got into the bay with Bill? Or was this a situation because of only one camera? Did you have him on location with you through the shoot?
No, he was cutting as some of the dailies were coming in, but it's better for me to not have the editor on the set because then he doesn't see any of the real geography of where the base camp was and what I only want him to know the geography out of the film that he sees.
Mm-hmm.
And then what I try and do is assemble the scenes the way I actually saw it. And then Bill is what I call my first audience, because he doesn't know about the production problems, he doesn't know about the location headaches, he doesn't have any of the on-set experience. So he's my first audience, my first fresh eyes, and then he can look at it and say, okay, this is what I'm feeling, and this is where I'm a little confused, and then we can sort of rebuild the scene. But that's the key. The key is that he's completely fresh to it.
Wow. And I can see with a film like this, that would be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, someone has to not be, oh my God, that's the day that the generator broke down, or that's the day that the actor didn't show up. All those things that it doesn't matter to the audience, and I don't want it to matter to the editor either.
Mm-hmm. What was the most challenging part for you as a director to bring this film, The Last Rampage, to life? Because there's so much material that I know you could have incorporated and included. So it
was very difficult to get the script down into fighting weight because, as you know, we could have done a 10-hour, miniseries about this. There's so much material.
Yeah, when I first heard about the film, that's the first thing I thought. It's a film? I was thinking, seriously, I was thinking miniseries, exploring the crimes that led to the conviction and incarceration, and then the prison break and the subsequent crimes.
Oh my God, you could do a fantastic 10-hour about this. And of course, that's not what we were doing, but it could be really interesting. So what we had to do is get down to the essence of Gary and his boys. And I always felt like, what was universal about this story was this cult-like father figure who lured his impressionable boys into his, basically into his mindset until they realized what they were dealing with, and by then it was too late.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the power of fathers and the influence of fathers over sons, that to me what I kept coming back to more than the true crime of it all, which is important. But I thought that was just fascinating, Gary and his boys.
And of course, then you throw in their mother, and
yes.
And okay, we have a whole new meaning of psychotic.
Well, she was an enabler, and she enabled these boys to go down this terrible dark path, and she had her own demons, her own religious fundamentalism that kept her protected from reality. And when reality finally bursts through her bubble and she realizes that this baby has been killed, she dissembles, because up until then she's created a fantasy about who her husband in fact was. And when that bubble gets burst, you see her collapse. And I think her religion, these are all very Pentecostal. There's a harshness about the religion in those days, a very, fire and brimstone kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. I like to call it holy rollers.
Yeah, they were definitely in that holy roller school. But she clung on to that and then clung on to this mythology about her husband and her boys, and then finally it just all collapsed.
You know, I'm curious, Dwight, what kind of differences do you find between doing television directing and, because you've done, I think the bulk of your TV work has been hour-long episodics.
Right.
But what do you find to be the biggest difference for you personally between a film like The Last Rampage or even Murder at 1600 as opposed to a TV show? Or isn't there a difference for you?
No, it's actually, and I try to explain this to film students who are always asking me, it's actually two different jobs. And I know that sounds bizarre, but it really is. When you're working in television, you bring your craft and your talent and your energy to bear as best as you can on the work, but it's not your work. It belongs to the network, it belongs to the showrunner, it belongs to, the studio, many times to the stars and the actors. You're there to do your job and do it really well, but it is not your authorship.
Mm-hmm.
And and I don't care what television it is. It's if you're doing Breaking Bad, it's really Vince Gilligan's Breaking Bad. It's not. It's even though the directors are very talented. So when I started off in television, I had the great gift of working with Chris Carter and David Kelly and John Wells, and then later Hart Hanson. So these people are, monumentally talented, but it is their creative thing, really. And then in a film, from Murder 1600 to Phantom of the Opera or Last Rampage or any of the things I've done, that you are in fact the author, as if you were authoring a book. Every piece of casting, every piece of wardrobe, every choice, the music, the titles, everything is your authorship. So I feel that that's a different job almost.
Do you have an affinity for one genre or the other? I mean, you've done comedy, Drop Dead Diva, but you've done, the thriller TV shows like The X-Files, like Bones, The Finder, Castle, Mystery, The Practice, even as a legal thriller. So I see a pattern here, but then I also see something like Free Willy too.
That's my standalone family movie.
So, do you have an affinity? Are these the kind of projects that really speak to you?
Yes. I am very drawn to the mystery thriller. When I was very young, it was all about 3 Days of the Condor and the French Connection and Bullet and this kind of thing. And LA Confidential later, and movies. I think mystery is the best way to describe it, because when there's a question, whether it's a crime or whether it's a behavior that nobody understands, then you have a mystery. And once you have a mystery, you have people's interest. So thrillers, horror, if it's good, murder mysteries, crime stories, these are all things that, people want to know how, why, what happened, how could this be? So the key to all of it is mystery, I think.
Mm. So then I have to ask you, how did you not direct any Murder, She Wrote episodes? I was never actually. I'm not sure that was in my wheelhouse when was that made? I can't remember. Murder.
That may be been.
It was still going in the 90s. It was still going in the 90s.
Well, because my first episode was 1997 when I directed Millennium, with Lance Henderson. That was another mystery, and that was my first. So in '97. So I don't remember being aware of that. It might have been just before my TV years.
Because I think it was winding down then, and had stopped it as a series and was actually just popping up as like a 2-hour special 3 or 4 times a year. But yeah, it's like, okay, you love all these mysteries. One of the seminal mystery shows, and it skipped you. So, you've been doing this for so long now, Dwight. I've got to ask you, what is the greatest gift that, be it directing a film, directing TV, what is the greatest gift it gives you that keeps you going and makes you keep looking for that next project?
Well, I think in terms of my own talents, whatever they are, I think one of them is that you have to realize that the director is the first audience, just like I was saying about Bill. That's really who you are. You're the first audience, and it's up to your instinct to know, are you telling this story in an interesting way? Are you on top of these performances? You're the storyteller. I do think I have a affinity for actors. I like talking to them. I like what they do, and I'm interested in what actors do. So I think that's a big help. And I'm very interested in camera, although I only want to do that third. I only want to pay attention to camera, in third place. It's script first. Then the actors, and then camera. But I don't know. I still get up in the morning when I get on the set. I get excited. I don't know why. I still get excited about trying to make something happen.
and here you're doing it. Murder in 1600 was, that went on to be a blockbuster. Halloween 4, part of a massive franchise. And here you have this fabulous indie, The Last Rampage. Do you see yourself now moving with feature films? Will you kind of hang out in this lower budget, the middle budget indie range?
Yeah, that's my new space because, clearly the business changes every 10 years. Well, now every couple of years, but we are in a franchise, world, and those $100 million movies, are not in my wheelhouse. And there's plenty of great, talented directors who do those. I feel like I fit better in this smaller space, and so yeah, I have more creative control in the independent world, and that's where I'd like to keep working, honestly.
Well, you get no complaints from me. I will see anything that you direct, Dwight. Anything.
Well, thank you so much. I appreciate that.
So now, how can everybody see The Last Rampage? I know it's opening Friday.
It is opening Friday. That's just at about 20 select theaters. So it's unlikely that a lot of your audience will be right next to a theater. But we are everywhere in the digital universe. So however you see movies, whether it's Dish or Direct or Vudu or PlayStation or iTunes or Amazon or however it is that you get movies, it will be available. And then later in January it'll be on Netflix, and then later at Redbox. So I think everybody will be able to see it. And those who are in New York, it's in a theater there, in Chicago, Dallas, Phoenix,
LA,
Los Angeles. So if you're in any of those cities, look at your local guide and try and see it in the theater. But if you happen not to be in one of those cities, it's going to be pretty much everywhere.
Well, I can't recommend it highly enough. And if anybody has read James Clark's book, they'll love the film. Go see the film. If you see the film, go get the book.
Yeah, well, absolutely. By the way, if you see the film, I agree with you. Go read that book. It's fascinating.
And, of course, then I will hound you, and everybody can hound you to go ahead and make that 10-hour miniseries.
That's right.
Dwight, we are all out of time today for the show. This has been a real joy for me to get to talk to you.
Well, thank you for being a supporter of Last Rampage, and thank you for supporting us, and I really appreciate it.
Well, and I hope that you will come back on the show again, maybe when this hits Netflix or DVD, Blu-ray or something, or for your next project.
Perfect.
Wonderful. Dwight Little, thank you so much.
Thank you. I'll talk to you soon. Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
And that was the wonderful director, Dwight Little, The Last Rampage, in theaters this Friday and everywhere digitally. So we are all out of time. This comes as no surprise once again. So for Michael Cuesta's interview and everything American Assassin, go to BehindTheLensOnline.net. Probably by tomorrow, everything will be there for you. Next week, we've got some in-studio guests. Luke Sabis is back with us in person, in studio. And we're going to talk some about Princess Morning Glory, Letitia Fairbanks' book that is out and about with her stepdaughter who is handling the distribution and promotion of that. So until next week, I'm Debbie Elias. This is Behind the Lens.